cynical Andy went, somebody's agent's just doing some work here. And then I thought about it a little more, and I'm like, maybe not. All right, so Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, graduate of West Orange High School in Winter Garden, Florida. He reports last night that some NFL teams might be interested in one Dan Lanning. And my initial thought, Ari, was, oh boy, Jimmy Sexton is getting some work done here because he's scared off all the college teams because Lanning's got like a $20 million buyout if he goes to another college team. And so he's just trying to get some more money, squeeze some more shekels out of Oregon. Is cynical Andy right on this?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's been nobody that's been more loyal to their program than Dan Lanning, right? Like last year, if he was ever going to jump ship, there was a pretty nice opportunity potentially waiting for him had he been more interested to go back to the South and try to compete in that fish tank. And he has put a lot of time and effort into building Oregon into the program now that could win a national championship. Now, it's very hard in these scenarios to speak for somebody who, you know, you're not talking to about these things. I don't know that I would feel like I would see a situation where he would be interested in that. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it's definitely savvy. And if it is true, then he's going to get paid more anyway.
He definitely doesn't seem interested in another college job. Either he's the best actor in the world about that, or he's legit. He's real. Like, does not want to go to another college job. But I remember, talking to him about it after year one at Oregon, and he very resolute. Like, I'm here. I love it here. My family loves it here. And they all say. But the other thing about Dan Lanning, you got to remember, most of the jobs that he would be up for are back down south. He's not Southern. He's from Kansas. So the going home piece of it, which I know Oregon fans are probably a little have some PTSD because they lost two coaches in a row who were Floridians who went back to schools in Florida. But I don't think that's an issue here. The NFL piece of it, the only thing I can think of is coaches want to work at the highest level sometimes. That some guys say, I'm a college coach, that's all I ever want to be. Some guys do want to work at the highest level. Dan Lanning, I don't think there's any part of his skill set that says he's a better college coach than an NFL coach. I think he's probably just a good coach. So he'd probably be successful either place. But he does seem pretty happy at Oregon. But I will point out that what makes this unusual, and we'll talk about that. We're going to have Pete Nakos join us at 11:15 Eastern time. We're going to talk coaching carousel. We're going to talk transfer portal. But the coaching carousel thing is interesting. There's a lot of group of five jobs that are going to open up this year. But Ari, I don't think there are going to be many power conference jobs open. I think there will be more NFL openings from firings than power conference openings from firings.
Yeah. And you did a good job on our show kind of illustrating the reason for that and how that might trickle down into the coordinator position, right? Like you have these insane buyouts. The collective bargaining seems to be right around the corner. We are in a position where these colleges need as much money as they can in order to prepare for the next frontier of college athletics. And, firing coaches with insanely high buyouts just is not good business. Going back to Dan Lanning, Andy, I do think that, part of the reason why I've always viewed him as somebody who would have been a reasonable or, maybe even a preferred candidate for a place like Alabama or any other Southern job that opens is because he seems to understand better or as well as anybody how to assemble a roster at the college level in order to put Oregon in the position that it is in today. And the thing that you always have to discuss and really dive into, Andy, when talking about jumping from this level to the NFL is that if you have less control over the talent advantage, if you have less control over who you get on your team on a year-to-year basis, at the NFL level, it's based on how good your GM is, how well you guys draft, and the X's and O's aspect of it, I think, is a much higher percentage of your job at the next level than it is in college. Like, I think that getting better players in college is a higher percentage. So when we say Dan Lanning is an amazing coach, when I say that, I love his aggressiveness on fourth down. I think he draws up great plays. Like, I'm not saying that he isn't great at that aspect of it. But what makes Dan Lanning a special college coach who has a $20 million buyout to go somewhere else, the reason is because he knows how to build a team. And that skill is not something that is transferred to the next level. So if I'm a college coach in Dan Lanning's position, a person who probably could stay at Oregon as long as he wants at this point, especially if they go out and win a national title at any point in the next few years, is I would always think from a job security standpoint is like, am I going to stay at Oregon, win national championships or compete for national championships and be at a very advantageous place to build a long-term winner where they'll make a statue of me? Or do I want to go coach the Cleveland Browns, go through another dysfunctional quarterback situation, and then get fired in 4 years? Like,
Stefanski's okay. So good news.
Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, was he the longest tenured Browns coach since 2000?
Yeah, I think. Well, let me give you a list of the NFL jobs that are either open or we think are going to open, and they're probably going to be more than this, but this is the ones that we can pretty safely say. The Jets and Saints are open. The Bears will open. The Cowboys will open. The Giants probably will open. Which, hey, Brian Dable as your OC in coordinator bingo. Just saying. Jaguars probably will open. Maybe the Raiders if they feel like they got a little hasty with Antonio Pierce. But so that was 6 before I said the Raiders. I actually think there's probably only about 2 in college. But I think what Dan Lanning does travels. He can, you mentioned his roster building is excellent, but I also think the way he motivates people, the quote that was in the Jeremy Fowler story, which I think did probably come from an NFL GM or probably, an owner or something, where he says that they feel like he's got a little Dan Campbell in him. I don't think he's as much fun as Dan Campbell. Like, I don't think I'd bang my head to Metallica with Dan Lanning the way I would with Dan Campbell, but I do think players would enjoy playing for him the way they play for Dan Campbell.
I mean, Dan Lanning does do a few upper deckies out there with the Zen, though. Let's not be 100% certain that this guy doesn't party. So, it would be kind of a fun dynamic. Like, imagine a world where Dan Lanning was coaching Caleb Williams for the Bears next year, like how small the world is sometimes. Yeah. But I think that he has got such a good thing going, and it is really, really hard to leave a good thing for an uncertain thing. So, yeah.
I have a question for you based on what you just said, because we always do these best jobs rankings. We've done them for years, and they always wind up being very controversial shows because people get mad when you say their job isn't the best in the world. But I do think the criteria that we use to rank best jobs has definitely got to change in this era of college football. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that we've done one reflecting the changes.
We should do it.
So where does Oregon fall? Because I'm thinking it is a top 3 job based on how well they've handled player acquisition and how aligned they've been in terms of player acquisition.
Absolutely. And I think that, just to be clear about what you mean, change the criteria for that, proximity to talent was like a top 2 bullet point on what
it was number 1. It was like close.
So, yeah. Obviously, I think the resources and investment in the program too, like all these things are all part of it. But if you have a place that has an NIL structure and an administration and a booster situation that's all aligned, I think Dan Lanning has proved through his talent accumulation, both in the high school ranks and the portal, that Oregon can equip a roster as effectively and as efficiently and deeply as some of the teams in the South that they're going to have to beat here in the next few months. So I think that, Oregon would be up there, and I would be interesting because I haven't actually given it that much thought, Andy. I think you should write that down so we can do it on our show.
Yeah.
Because it is like, it used to be like Georgia's number 1 because it's near Atlanta, it's in the South, and it's got all this money, and it's a blue blood. It's like, I don't know if that's changed, right? Like Georgia's probably still number 1. But like when you start getting into, maybe Texas is number 2 because it still matters, being the brand and being close.
And they've been very aligned on this stuff. Like Oregon, I think Tennessee has jumped up because they've been good at that stuff. It's not just that Josh Heupel's been good at coaching them. Their administration, the Spire Collective, they've done such a good job with all that. you understand now why they are better as a program on the field.
Well, where in the past too, Andy, Tennessee would have been negged because Tennessee is a long, interesting state that's recruited by everybody. There's not a ton of players there in comparison.
Parallelogram.
This is a bad at math, science, and any other high school subject podcast.
I'm good at geography. Speak for yourself.
I suck at geography. I suck at math. I suck at American history. Frankly, I suck at college football. What are we talking about here? I don't even know the college football trivia that
seen
you know.
Your picks.
Yeah. But seriously, Tennessee is not a place that has talent at the same level as a Florida or a California or a Texas or a Georgia. So, correct. And Ohio State and Georgia and all the teams in the general area will go there for their players. But I do think that there is something to it. And like Tennessee's recent run of success with the coach who gets it, also, like, is there a better place to play than a hyped up, Neyland, right? Like these are things that are all coming back into play. So that would be a fun exercise. And I do think that Oregon would jump up higher. I think Tennessee would jump up higher, but it would be an interesting thought exercise to see which ones actually do, or if the top 10 would look eerily similar again. Like, what do you do with Ohio State?
Well, Ohio State's still but is there any scenario in college football where Ohio State isn't one of the best at it? Like, they just always are. But I think Oregon moves into that echelon in terms of a coaching job that would be desirable. And if you're Dan Lanning, you've moved around a ton. And I mean, that's the thing that people understand about Dan Lanning. He's moved from, he was working at a high school in Kansas. He's moved to Pittsburgh. He's moved to Arizona. He's moved to Memphis, to Georgia. Like, he has been all over the country and not stayed anywhere for particularly long. He's got younger kids. You see the pictures he posts of his family. Like, I understand your daughter's very young. Well, this ties into the theme of the show with JD about to become a dad. Like, when your kids get a little bit older, you do want to give them some stability. You don't want to change them schools every year or so, every couple of years. You want them to have a place that feels like home for them. So I get it from his standpoint. And it seems like Oregon's doing everything they can possibly do to make sure he's happy there.
Yeah. And listen, too, we're talking about this with the understanding that if Lanning went to the NFL, that would be a shocker, right? Like, that would be something that we didn't anticipate. So, people like Lanning is...
But him doing it wouldn't shock me as much as some other coaches doing it, because I think he could succeed there. It's not like his success is not completely recruiting based. And also, he's kind of operating in a world, because again, Oregon's good at the player acquisition piece of it in the NIL era. He's operating in a world that's similar to the NFL in terms of personnel.
Yeah. And you can't give him crap for not winning big games anymore.
No, they beat Ohio State. And I think he's getting the Washington monkey off his back too. I think that's coming in a couple of weeks. So we'll find out. But I'm fascinated by this coaching carousel. We'll see if anybody goes to the NFL, because I do think there may be some interest in some college guys. And remember, the agents for these guys are going to want to push them toward the NFL, because there's not really anywhere to push them in college with nobody firing anybody this year.
College football sickos, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Also want to make sure y'all know the Hard Count brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Playing with PrizePicks using code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups gets you $50 in promo funds. So appreciate y'all using that code, and appreciate you being subscribed.